in between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the VRRC. It's been a good few weeks since we spoke to you last at the conclusion of our GTV3 Championship, which proved to be another sensational success and provided some fantastic racing and a really nail-biting championship that went right down to the wire. But for the next 8 weeks, we are back to do it all over again with our latest championship here at the VRRC. It is another touring car championship, the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship, but with a difference. Cars that we have never used before in VRRC competition will be taking centre stage, and I think based on the practice times that we've been seeing coming in the build-up to this opening round, they should produce certainly the sort of close racing we saw from our last Touring Car Championship. It could prove to be even more competitive. Andy McEwan here in the commentary box as ever to talk you through the action this season, joined for the first time, myself that is, not a rookie to the commentary box by any stretch, but the first time that I have had the pleasure of working with Lewis Edwards. Lewis, good evening. Great to have you here. Mr. Oliphant will be back from next week onwards. He is currently travelling up from London, hasn't been able to make it here in time, so we've got the super sub in. And Lewis, it's a real pleasure to have you here. Are you as excited for this as I am?
I'd argue more excited because I can see just how close the practice times are at the moment. Currently, in just the last hour of this practice, we've got 6 cars within a tenth and a half. And a lot of them are completely different brands. So we are in for an incredibly close season, I think.
We certainly are. It's a season that will take us the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. We start tonight on the Donington Park National Circuit before heading to the Brands Hatch Indy Circuit, then the tight, twisty confines of the Croft Circuit in North Yorkshire, and then similarly the tight, twisty confines of the Cheshire Alton Park Circuit, which will take us into the second half of the season, which kicks off on the Snetterton 300 track. Then we head to Thruxton. That is going to be an interesting night for sure. The Brands Hatch Grand Prix Circuit does not host the final round this time around. Instead, that honour falls to the home of British motor racing, the Silverstone Grand Prix Circuit, the perfect place really to round out the championship. We've done this before, Lewis, where we've raced exclusively at British tracks in touring car machinery. It's a tried and tested format. We know it works, and these tracks I think are really going to produce a good mix of results, especially given the fact that we have quite a variety of car on show this season.
Yeah, we do. For, I think, the first time, certainly in my time in VRRC, we've got different drivetrains in the cars. We've got some front-wheel drive cars, and we've got some rear-wheel drive cars, and it's really torn the drivers over which ones they want to pick. Some, like Nicky Taylor, immediately leapt to front-wheel drive, that's what they know, and some, like Jack Smith, leapt over to rear-wheel drive because that's what he knows and loves. And we've had some in the middle who have gone umming and ahhing between, and I think everybody has eventually settled on a car choice that they're really happy with. We've had hundreds and hundreds of practice laps from each of them in multiple cars to test just which one works for them. So I think we're going to see a real close season and a bunch of drivers really enjoying the driving as well.
Absolutely, yes. 6 different touring cars available. We've got the Honda Civic, the Toyota Corolla, the Ford Focus, the Hyundai i30, Vauxhall Astra, and as nearly called you Jack, as Lewis just mentioned, the rear-wheel drive BMW 330i as well. And what I think we will see over the course of these 8 weeks is that certain cars may be better suited to certain circuits. That a lot of work has gone on, and Lewis, I'm sure you can tell us more about this behind the scenes to make sure that the cars are as equal as possible. But naturally, there will be slight nuances to the driving styles, and there will be slight differences in which tracks and which parts of tracks certain cars excel in, and even certain cars that perhaps are stronger at the beginning, middle, or end of the races.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the good thing we've done here is we haven't gone for all of the cars are exactly the same. They're all the same lap time wise, but they achieve that lap time in very different ways, which means each car has its own little characteristics. So you'll see across some of the front wheel drive cars, slightly shorter in wheelbase than the Honda specifically. And that means they'll generate their lap time in different ways. But if you maximize it in every car, you'll get to that same peak lap time no matter which car you're in. And that's the really important bit.
Indeed so, and as always, the driver who masters all of these variables over the course of the season will be receiving a very, very nice prize indeed, because we have, I think, actually outdone ourselves even this season with prizes, not for everybody, but certainly lots of them up for grabs. Our eventual champion will claim a Cammus wheelbase. Cammus Simulation we are once again happy to have on board as our title sponsor. There'll be an Aegon 34-inch gaming monitor for our runner-up in the championship, and then in third place you will get a TM handbrake and shifter as well. That's a really high value piece of kit, that, for our third place driver. Fourth place receives 2 hours of sim practice at the VRRC and a single hour of practice at the VRRC headquarters for our fifth place driver. This is all in the outright championship at the end of the season. There is also the prize draw, which makes a return again this season for any driver who has done at least 7 of the 8 rounds and doesn't place inside the top 5 in the championship. They'll be entered into the prize draw, the winner of which will receive 1 hour. I'll start that again. There are 2 one-hour sim practices available at the VRRC, available through the prize draw. The driver of the round is back, but with a new prize this season, because the driver of each round will receive not only the VRRC medal, but also a jacket courtesy of NGK. And NGK also are providing a hat for the top scoring driver each week. So each individual round through qualifying race 1 and race 2, the driver that comes away with the highest score will receive a bobble hat courtesy of NGK. And Lewis, we've also got another prize from NGK, which our viewers at home have a chance of taking with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know we get a lot of wonderful comments in our social media chats, in the chats for the streams, and we'd like to give back to one of you lucky viewers. Every round, there's going to be one NGK jacket up for grabs for somebody who just entertains us in the comment section of one of the streams, maybe just says a funny comment or just some really nice supportive comment to one of our drivers. We're going to single out one really nice thing we've seen in the stream, and you'll win yourself an NGK jacket. So thank you again to NGK for providing that for us.
Indeed so. Now, the danger here is that Josh Martin's biggest fan, Dave, ends up taking that prize every week. So we need you all to work hard in the chat to make sure that someone else has a chance of winning it. So get involved in the conversation, whether it be chatting about the races, supporting your favourite driver, or just an observation of what's going on. Do let us know and get involved. We'd love to hear from you. Well, qualifying, I can tell you, has got underway here at our opening round. We will bring you the live coverage of that in a moment or two. But first, let's familiarise ourselves with the high-speed sweeping Donington Park National Circuit.
Hello and welcome to Donington Park for the first round of the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Season 4. Heading into turn 1, we're going to go late on the brakes, down to third gear, get it turned in nice and early and back to the power as quickly as you dare, using up all the road on the exit. Important to get a good exit there, using the hybrid here where possible to try and gain an advantage on the cars around you. Into old hairpin, brake early, make sure you use up all of the road available to you but not the grass. Back on the hybrid now to try and get as good of a top speed round here as we can. Stay as far left as you dare and then fight the oversteer on the entry all the way through the corner and get a nice exit. Do this difficult uphill right-hander. You want to be coasting when you hit the curb so it doesn't over-rotate the car, but then back to the power as soon as you can, using up all of that road again. Now you've got to brace yourself for the final chicane. You want to brake as late as you dare, down to third gear. Be completely coasting when you hit the curb for the first time, otherwise it unsettles the car. And make it round nicely through the second part, and that completes a very fast-paced lap, Donington Park.
So qualifying underway then here at Donington Park, and we have lots of cars out on track because we are delighted to say we've got basically the biggest grid we've ever had for one of these championships, with 24 drivers here tonight. I think we've got 25 of them entered into the championship. Lots of returning favourites, but also a few new names that we'll try and pick out as the evening goes on, and it's going to be fascinating to see how those drivers get on who are making their debuts with the VRRC, and whether any of them could spring a bit of a surprise. Joel Lask, one of those returning drivers. Carl Felvis, likewise, at the wheel of the Honda. And we get our first look at the cars as they make their way around the Donington Park National Circuit. A layout that, Lewis, I have always massively enjoyed, and I think is perfect for touring car racing, really. I've never seen a dull touring car race around Donington Park. There's something about this place that really suits this kind of racing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very easy to follow around here, and there's plenty of opportunities for overlaps, and just the way the circuit is lends itself to side-by-side racing. It's quite a wide circuit. There's plenty of times where you have to stamp on the brakes, so it enables you to lunge up the inside, but it gives the other car the opportunity for a cutback. You can carry on the move down the next sort of straight. So I spent many an hour on this track battling. Notably, we did an event back in the time when we did our first touring car with hybrid championship. In practice with Dave Marshall, we just spent like half an hour side by side just racing when we were practicing, and you could manage it so easily. It lends itself to lots of side by side action, which for the drivers is great if you're attacking, not so great if you're defending, but it's brilliant for us in the commentary box for sure.
It absolutely is. Always produces excitement, and I'm sure tonight will be no different, especially given the really close practice times that we've had. So far, just over a tenth of a second is Joel Lask's advantage in qualifying. Joel Lask, of course, was rapid the last time we raced touring cars. He's gone for the Hyundai. We've got a Hyundai from a Honda at the moment on the front row. Carl Felvis second, and then this man, Oliver Gibson, one of only 2 BMWs entered into the championship. He was third. He's now down to 4th place, though, because his teammate Jack Smith has jumped onto the front row of the grid. Now, another new thing we can bring you to the broadcasts this season, as well as some fancy new graphics, is our onboard. We quite literally can ride on board with a number of drivers out there. This is Oliver Gibson hard at work on his rig as he makes his way through towards the completion of a flying lap. Is that going to be an improvement? No, it's not. He will stay in 4th place. But this is a really nice touch, this, Lewis, to be able to see the drivers hard at work, because I tire of hearing people saying that sim racing is not a strenuous activity. Okay, we're not running marathons here, but as you'll be able to see through these onboard cameras, it is not easy, and I reckon a number of these drivers will work up a bit of a sweat as the evening goes on.
Yeah, I imagine so. Oliver Gibson looks like he's got his force feedback set fairly high, and he likes to fight the car on the exits. I noticed when doing the track guide for the BMW, the car does tend to slide and oversteer quite a lot through the medium speed corners and on the exits if you're a bit too trigger happy with your right foot. So he's got his force feedback dialed in very nicely to know where to correct the car. You can see him working away at the wheel on the exits there very quickly to just keep the car pointing in the right direction and try and maximize the traction. Little flash of the headlights there as he's now approaching Paul Laramie. He's obviously on a decent lap, doesn't want to get disturbed. Let's see where this puts him.
Yeah, across the line he will go. 4th quickest at the moment, which is where he stays. But Jack Smith, his teammate, has now gone fastest. So we have got a BMW on pole from a Hyundai second, a Honda third. There is Jack Smith. Now, when I think of Jack Smith racing at the VRRC, Lewis, I think of touring car racing. He has had success in this type of racing before. Admittedly always in front-wheel drive machinery, but we know what a versatile sim racer Jack Smith is. He's been terribly unlucky the last few times that he's entered into one of these championships, often getting himself involved in scrapes early on in the season. He really needs to try and make sure that doesn't happen here tonight. If he can have a good start to the season, this surely has to be a driver we'll be talking about as a championship contender in 8 weeks' time.
Absolutely. If we go back to the practice times from just this week, Jack was the quickest overall, so I think he's definitely in contention. And it's also worth noting he will have quite a lot of ballast already in the car. I'd imagine him and Eric will have the joint heaviest cars already from those previous championships where Jack has done so well. He's already having that disadvantage, which will then only grow a little bit if he gets to the top 5 in the championship, where we get weight added on there. But he's already racing with a heavy car and already at the front of the grid. So I think him, amongst others, will definitely be in the fight for the championship at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, carrying that ballast is something that may affect different cars differently as someone bounces along the grass there coming out of Redgate Corner. That was one of our new drivers, actually, Chris Blakey in the number 51 Ford Focus. Joel Lass going past him, but Chris Blakey, one of a number of different drivers racing with us for the very first time, and a couple of them of note due to their real-world experience. Chris is one of them. The other driver I'm really interested to see over the course of the season is Lee Morgan. Lee Morgan at the wheel of the number 56 car, former F1000 champion in real life, a very, very talented driver. There is Chris riding on board with him now as he steers his way through Coppice Corner. Of course, this lap won't be an improvement because of that grassy moment at Redgate, so he's going to try and drop back, find some clean air, and try to go a little bit better this time around. It's Joel Lask who's just ahead of him. Joel Lask currently sitting second on the grid. Gibson's back up to third now with Nicky Taylor fourth, Scott Bugner fifth, Kyle Felvers in sixth, Eric Axelson down in seventh place ahead of Josh Martin. So at the moment, those two not having a great session. Now, they are also in a car, Lewis, that has not proven to be especially popular. We only have 2 of the Vauxhall Astras entered into the championship. Eric Axelson and Josh Martin are those 2 Vauxhall Astras. Right now, they are towards the back end of the top 10, which is a bit further back than I expected.
Yeah, Eric was right up there in the practice times, so I think there's a bit more performance from him. But I think Eric's real strength has not generally been qualifying. It's been holding on to those tyres and just keeping that pace up in the races. You look at the lap times for the races he's ran away with, you'd be surprised how little the actual difference was between how quickly he could go versus his competitors, but you'd be surprised just how consistent he was. That's where he makes up his time. It's holding on to the tyres and staying consistent, where others overpush, make a little mistake. That's where they fall back in comparison to Eric. It's never been his electric one-lap pace that's won him the now, I think, 3 championships after the GTV3s. And in a front-wheel drive car where overheating the tyres is a genuine issue around here, I think we're going to see Eric's strength towards the end of the races this evening.
Indeed so. He was 7th fastest, by the way, but Elliot Dalton-Ayres has just gone quicker. And Elliot, one of several drivers going quicker at this stage of the session. We're getting quite a few personal best sectors being posted by various drivers up and down the order. Andy Dorman has just jumped into 12th position, for example. Josh Martin, in fact, has now gone 7th. So Josh Martin in the other green Vauxhall Astra, jumping up a couple of positions. It is so tight, though. The first second takes you from pole position, Jack Smith, all the way down to Reese Bell in 14th place, and that's just under a second. And then I think the next 6 or 7 drivers covered by under half a second. It is incredibly tight, incredibly competitive out there, and this bodes well for the pair of 20-minute races that are coming up later on this evening. There are 90 seconds left on the clock. Who has a late improvement to be found? Well, Joel Lask has just gone green in Sector 2. That means personal best, and then a purple in Sector 3. So Joel Lask pushing on here. He's just got across the line. It's an improvement in time, but only good enough to stay in second place by 76 thousandths of a second. Then he misses out on pole position. Nicky Taylor third. Carl Felvers jumps up into 5th position. Lots of improvements coming in towards the end of the session. Another one there. That was Bugner now going back up ahead of Carl Felvers. Lewis, in a session as tight as this, if you can find even a fraction of a 1/10 of a second, it could move you a whole row further up the grid.
Well, Joel Lask found a 1/10.5 in turn 1 on this lap. So he's definitely going to be making a charge for pole position with this lap. You can see the delta on the dashboard. You can see the gear in the middle. The number to the left that says minus 0.036 at the moment means he's 300ths up. So he's lost a little bit of time on that 1/10.5 he found in turn 1. How's the chicane? He's gone for a slower in, fast out approach. Ooh. He's half a 1/10 up. It's going to be tight, but I don't think it's going to be quite enough.
Oh, he's got a
And by
faint turn across the
6
line.
milliseconds.
Oh, wow, a 107.434. 1,000ths of a second, and you're right, Lewis, that was all in that final chicane. He sacrificed entry speed to get the run off the corner, got a hint of a slipstream maybe from one of the cars ahead of him, and it was so very nearly enough to get pole. Now the good news is he's got time for one more lap. He got through before the checkered flag, which is now waving. Scott Bugner, one of the first drivers to take that checkered flag. His Hyundai will line up no better than 5th on the grid. Josh Martin, 8th, has also seen the flag. Andy Dorman as well, and the number 32 of Curtis, also Craig Curtis, that is, also seeing the checkered flag. But are we going to see any further improvements here towards the end? Will Jack Smith be able to hang on to pole? Well, he's just improved actually his lap time fractionally, so it's now an enormous 27,000ths of a second separating the top two. What is Lask doing? Well, sector 1 wasn't an improvement, sector 2 was though, so another chicane similar to the one that he did on the previous lap might just net him pole position. The LB Motorsport Hyundai comes out of the final chicane to the timing line. Is it good enough to steal the pole position away right at the death? The answer is no. It's Jack Smith who looks as though he will line up on pole position. BMW will start from the front of the grid ahead of a Hyundai of Joel Lask. Nicky Taylor in the Honda will be third, with Oliver Gibson and Scott Bugner completing the top 5. Any other improvements further back? Andy Carroll stays in 13th. John Jones has had a very interesting approach to the final chicane. John Jones only 1.2 seconds off the pace. That is probably quite an improvement for John. Unfortunately, it's super competitive out there, and he will have to settle still for 17th on the grid. So qualifying complete then here at Donington Park. A very exciting session, bodes well, as I've said, for the races coming up very shortly. Race 1 on its way on the other side of this quick. Welcome back, everyone, to the VRRC. A very exciting and extremely tight qualifying session has just been completed for the opening round of the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship, and we have our first pole sitter of the season. He joins us now in the commentary box. Jack Smith, huge congratulations. I think in the end it was a pretty sizable 27,000ths of a second that you claimed pole position by. For a long time there, it looked like it was going to be even closer than that. How confident were you that you were going to hang on to that?
Well, 27,000 seems quite a large gap now, considering the practice session we've been having. So, Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be close. I think here, practice has been like top 10 within 2 tenths. So it's you have to be on the ball. You have to get your lap in, and I got one just in the end with a little tiny mistake, but yeah, just managed to scrape pole with it. So really happy.
Yeah, pole position always important, especially given how tight it is. I think we had something like 14 drivers covered by less than a second in that qualifying session. If you get caught up in a battle with somebody, the leaders are going to disappear, and it's going to be very difficult to get back through and reclaim that track position.
Yeah, definitely. So just got to focus on my start, make sure I try and get a nice little gap and manage it with the hybrid, which is something I've got to get used to, having never driven anything with a hybrid before. So yeah, big learning curve for me, but we'll see how it goes. We'll just take it lap by lap.
First of all, the start, and as you said, trying to manage the hybrid at the start, trying to manage the rear-wheel drive car that should have an advantage. How confident are you that you will arrive at that first corner first? And then how do you kind of expect those opening laps to play out? We're not necessarily sure that the BMW is going to be the fastest car over the first couple of laps.
Well, I hope the BMW will be fast off the line, but I guess we'll find out when we go into turn 1, and yeah, we'll just try and play our cards right as we head into turn 1, and hopefully no one makes any silly moves.
Well, Jack, the very best of luck. We'll let you go and make your final preparations, but congratulations on that first pole of the season.
Cool. Cheers, guys.
So Jack Smith will be starting from the front of the grid then for what is going to be a hugely exciting race. The drivers are lined up. The red light's about to come on. I am genuinely excited about this, even more so than I normally would be at the start of a new season. The Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship bursts into life here at Donington Park, and Jack Smith has nailed the start of the race. Here comes his teammate Oliver Gibson as well. The rear-wheel drive BMWs, as we expected, launching off the line. Well, can Gibson get into second place? Yes, he can. So Gibson a bit sideways on cold tyres though, drifts out wide. Here comes Lask in the Hyundai, back up the inside, through Hollywood and down through the train of curves. Jack Smith already starting to make his escape, but can Oliver Gibson hold on to his newly acquired second place? The answer is yes. Lask drops into third, Taylor fourth, Scott Bugner in fifth position, and remarkably, I think they're all pretty much cleanly through the opening sequence of corners, but Lewis Edwards, that pretty much panned out how we expected, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking to Jack in the advert break, and he was confident that if he got his clutch bite point set right and he got it off the line nicely, he'd have a decent advantage by turn 1, and it's a second to his teammate, of all people. So Oliver's probably going to play a bit of rear gunner, but Joel's going for the move immediately, doesn't want to waste any time.
Oh, lovely move. Rattles over the curbs a bit, though. This is that typical Donington Park switchback racing we were talking about. Gibson now on the hybrid gets back through. When the light next to a driver's number on that timing tower is orange, it means they are using the hybrid. They get 15 10-second activations, and they can use them whenever they want over the course of the race. That is Lask out wide. Taylor through. Felvers pushing him down the hill, and it will bring Scott Bugner by as well. Joel Lask is potentially going to lose another place, actually, because Josh Martin and Elliot Dalton-Ayres aren't far. That was a costly mistake, that, from Joel Lask. It hands second place back to Oliver Gibson, and Nicky Taylor up into third. Look at the concentration on that young man's face. He's in a podium place. He's back in his happy place as well. Front-wheel drive touring car racing. This is the Nicky Taylor we have come to expect, Lewis.
Yeah, he looks so much more at home driving the front-wheel drive Honda than he did in the rear-wheel drive Porsche. I know he struggled with that car a lot and its inability to take the curbs. Well, this Honda, as you'll see in the final chicane, it absolutely loves them. As we'll see right here, he's going to go all the way over them. And so far, third place, which is much better than we saw from him in the previous championship. It's much more like the Nicky Taylor that won the Cayman Cup back in a few championships ago. He looks much more at home with the car, and he's now chasing down Oliver Gibson, who did set the fastest lap of the race on the previous time by.
So, yes, you'd be forgiven for not knowing that Nicky Taylor didn't enjoy driving that Porsche last season. I don't think he mentioned it all that much over the course of the 8 weeks. Certainly very happy to be back in the Honda this week, I am sure, to kickstart his championship campaign. And he's definitely closing in on Gibson, who, as you quite rightly said, is doing his best to go after Jack Smith. Jack Smith leads, then Gibson second, Taylor third, Felvers fourth, Bugner fifth, as close as you like, with Josh Martin a little way further back. But both he and Elliot Dalton-Ayres have found a way past Joel Lask. It's all unravelling here for Joel Lask. That moment that he had at Redgate Corner, he's just not really had the chance to regroup regroup from that. He's back up the inside of Dalton Ayres now towards the chicane, and he will go through with the assistance of the hybrid. But I kind of expected to see things like this happening, Lewis, because the field is so tightly bunched this season. If you make a mistake, if something goes wrong, if you lose your rhythm even for a moment, you won't just lose 1 or 2 positions, you're going to lose a handful.
Yeah, the good thing and the bad thing about that's come from our racecraft sessions is now drivers are learning how to profit off other people's mistakes a lot better and more cleanly. But on the flip side, now, if you do make a mistake, you've got about 3 drivers in a queue to pass you. As Joel's just dipped a little wheel onto the grass there, that's going to give Elliot and then Eric a run on him. So he's now got 2 people all over him after 1 very small little mistake.
Oh, Elliot Dalton Ayres back up the inside again into McLean. This is brilliant racing, and Eric Axelsen just trying desperately to find a gap. He's not going to make it 3 wide into Coppice, surely. Thought about it, decided better of it. One of the Hondas is off in the background. That was Paul Laramie, I think, who was on his way to the East Midlands Airport runway then, coming out of McLean's corner. Rejoined still in 12th position, but brilliant touring car battling we're seeing. Dalton Ayres and Axelsen both ahead of Joel Lask now, who suddenly finds himself down in 9th position. Now, in days gone by, when we'd have 13 or 14 drivers on the grid, the one thing that Joel Lask could console himself with is that at least that would be towards the front of the grid for the reverse grid race too, but that's not going to be the case with now nearly 25 drivers signed up on the grid. Back through goes Lask ahead of Eric Axelsen through Redgate Corner as those two continue to trade positions. It's staying stable at the moment, a 1.8 second lead out in front in what is a 20-minute race. We're only 5 minutes in, Lewis, and so much action already as again Lask and Axelsen are side by side, and a big slide. That is Ethan Hill getting it all wrong down at the old hairpin. Not the first driver, Lewis, who we've seen dipping a wheel on the grass there.
Yeah, I think it might be just one of those corners where, oh, that's even more so in the background there. Ooh. I think that was Stuart Vickers demonstrating exactly what we've just been talking about. Stuart's on the right-hand side of the car in that focus, so he's much further away from where the grass is. And I think when you're in the right-hand drive cars going through there, you might just think it's a bit insignificant how wide you're going until you go onto the grass and round you go. But out front at the moment, Jack Smith's been able to only use one of those push-to-pass hybrid activations, so he's saving a few. Oliver Gibson's got a couple over the drivers behind him, but Jack's got that advantage at the moment, and he's just controlling it, I sense, already.
And really, that advantage, tactical advantage that he's got with the hybrid, it all came from that demon start, because he pulled that gap on the first lap without having to rely too much on the hybrid, and he's just been able to manage that situation, as you quite rightly said. The battle for second is still the one that looks the more entertaining, doesn't it? Oliver Gibson, Nicky Taylor, Carl Felvers, and Scott Bugner absolutely nose to tail. Then the gap back to Josh Martin's Vauxhall in 6th. Elliot Dalton Ayres in the Hyundai is 7th, with Axelsen, Lask and Curtis completing the top 10. So Craig Curtis, the highest placed of the debutants, having a really, really great showing. He's a couple of seconds behind Joel Lask, but he's inside the top 10. And if he can hang on to that 10th place, that would be a mega, mega achievement.
Yeah, absolutely. Craig kind of appeared out of nowhere. He just suddenly became a member and started driving with us. And he's been really quick so far. He's proven his speed. He's done a lot of good practice laps, and it's good to see him up there. And I think he may or may not know that Joel has already used 3 more push-to-passes than he has. So if he does know that, he might sense that 9th place is on the cards. And there's a couple of drivers even further up. We've got Elliot, Eric and Joel.
Ooh.
So potentially there's going to be some people running out of hybrid quite soon. But Craig... Sorry, go on, Andy.
Sorry, it's Scott Bugner there, who was also running out of road because he had a huge moment going into McLean's. I don't know whether he dipped a wheel on the grass going in, but the Hyundai suddenly snapped sideways and ended up going through the gravel trap, so he drops off the back now of this second place battle. So Gibson, Taylor and Felvers left on their own in the fight for second spot, and it looks to me as though Nicky Taylor is building up to a bit of a challenge now. He's got his teammate behind him as well, remember, and good friend Kyle Felvers. He knows he's not going to be under too much attack from the second of those Hondas for now, and he can go after the BMW. There is Nicky Taylor. He has got his eyes set on the prize, and that prize right now is a really solid second place to begin his championship campaign with. Now, as we approach half race distance, Lewis, what are we expecting to see from tyre wear? Because again, we made the point, all of these cars have their subtle differences, but one of the biggest differences is the difference between front and rear wheel drive. That is a fundamental difference in handling and driving style, but also tyre management. Do we expect that BMW of Oliver Gibson's to get stronger as the race goes on? Or from what you're seeing of the car, do you think maybe the advantage could lie with the Hondas?
I think the one thing I do like about this is it will depend on how they're driving the cars. There's the potential for that BMW to take off into the distance. There's the potential for it to go massively backwards through the pack. It all depends on how everybody drives. From looking at Nicky's picture-in-picture camera, which I can see in a better resolution and much bigger than you can on the stream, I can see going through the higher speed corners, his front left tyre especially is starting to go yellowy orange on the tyre graphic he's running on his screen, which means it's getting a bit hot and it's wearing the tyres out a bit. So what we'll see is that going to be significant towards the end of the race? It's looking like it's a bit more orange than it was the previous lap when I was looking. So I think Nicky might just have to control it a little bit more, lock the fronts there ever so slightly. So he's just going to have to keep that tyre temps under control. But with the BMW, it's the rear tyre pressures and tyre temperatures that you want to worry about. Because as you saw from Oliver Gibson in qualifying, he was fighting the wheel a lot on the exit of the corners. He was slipping the rear tyres to try and get the optimal speed out of the corners, but that increases the tyre pressure and wears the tyres out more and overheats them more. So you've got to be careful with how you use the grip from the tyres in the BMW. If you can manage it well, then you can definitely keep up with a person managing the front-wheel drive cars perfectly as well. But if you make a mistake in managing it and you cook your tyres a bit too much, then you may get swallowed up by the pack towards the end of the race.
One driver who has been doing a good way, it seems, a good job, it seems, of preserving the tyres, and it won't be shocking news to hear this, is Eric Axelsen, because Eric Axelsen just on his previous lap set a purple first sector faster than anybody else, and he's closing in on the Josh Martin, Elliot Dalton Ayres battle ahead of him, bringing with him Joel Lask as well. So Joel Lask sort of slowly starting to buy back into the fight. So two Astras, two Hyundais grouping themselves together, once again proving that the best of the battling isn't always right at the front of the field. Josh Martin with a very different line out of Coppice there in his Astra than we saw from the Hyundai behind, whilst Joel Lask is on the hybrid. So too is Eric Axelsen, but it doesn't seem to matter. The Hyundai's up the inside into the chicane. Axelsen lets him have it on the way in and instead tries to focus on that all-important exit speed to get the run towards Redgate Corner. There is a 5-second cooldown period between hybrid applications, so neither of them able to jump straight back on it coming out of the chicane. Axelsen to the outside line. Again, can't go the long way round. Will try to get the traction on the exit, and that is where that superior front tyre grip maybe that Eric has really come into play. He gets the much better exit. He gets back ahead of Joel Lask and is through once more into 8th position. There is Eric working hard down through the old hairpin. That just lost them a little bit of time though to the two cars that they had been catching, and so now Eric needs to just try and relax and get back on with this. Have to say, having spoken to Eric on numerous occasions over the last couple of years, Lewis, I expected a much more relaxed, laid-back driving style, but even Eric Axelsen having to get up on the wheel here tonight to try and make progress.
Yeah, I think with the front-wheel drive cars, you have to try and induce a bit of oversteer to get the car to turn. With the adjustments, we run a fixed setup, well, a semi-fixed, I think, is the way Rich calls it, where some of the more simple parameters are left up to driver's choice, but we lock certain parameters so that it's a bit more equal and it gives everybody a bit more of a chance. Ooh, Joel had a look there just as Eric was turning in, but I think he's not quite managed to make it stick. But we have some parameters which are closed and they're fixed for every car, and that just means that on the front wheel drives, the balance definitely leans towards understeer and drivability compared to oversteer and just a bit more turning. So I think some of the front wheel drive drivers are having to try and induce that oversteer on the entry to try and get it to turn in just a little bit better lap time wise, but not too often so that it scrubs the tyres and then overheats them. It's a very tricky balance to manage, and it looks like the HFT boys, Nicky and Kyle, have got it the best at the moment in the Honda.
Yeah, those of the front-wheel drive cars look the most competitive, don't they? Because they've dropped Scott Bugner even now. They're lapping a good 2 to 3 tenths of a second a lap faster than him and going with the Beamers. So the Honda, which is a slightly longer wheelbase, Lewis was telling me earlier on, than the other front-wheel drive cars. Only fractional, but that maybe is making a little bit of a difference to the balance of the cars in the long run, and they're doing their best to try and go after the Beamers. There is the lead group, 2 seconds between Jack Smith and Oliver Gibson, 6-7 tenths back to Nicky Taylor in third, with Carl Felvers fourth. They perhaps are now just starting to struggle a bit on that left front tyre. Donington is one of the harder tracks on tyre wear, though, it must be said, because you're turning right so much more than you're turning left, and lots of those right-handers are quite long and quite high speed. So the left front tyre on the front wheel drive cars will take a bit of a beating. But Lewis, I do expect over the course of the season to see this ebb and flow. At the moment, it would be very, very easy, and I would put money on one of the front wheel drive drivers mentioning it tonight. It would be very easy to say the BMW has a clear advantage, but in all likelihood, the next time we arrive at a track in a week's time at Brands Hatch, it could be completely different. In certain situations, the front-wheel drive cars are going to have an advantage. When we get into the reversed grid race even later on in the evening, potentially a full 24-car reverse. When the elbows come out and there's a little bit of argy-bargy going on, do you really want to be in a rear-wheel drive car that could so easily be tapped into a spin? So right now, they're controlling it so far, Jack Smith and Oliver Gibson, but will that continue to be the case as we move forward? Likely, I'd say.
Yeah, in fact, I was having this very conversation with Reece Bell in the pre-season. He's debating whether to pick a rear-wheel drive car or the Focus, because he said he was getting about the same lap time in both and was just asking for what I recommended. And I ended up saying if you can get the same lap time out of both, then you're probably better off picking the front-wheel drive car, purely on the basis of it's much easier to drive when you're not in the perfect conditions, when you're not on your own, driving on the racing line, and you're in a happy place, you know, you're in the zone, and you're pumping out the lap times. When you've got to send a move, you've got to avoid an accident, or you've got to try and, you know, avoid contact, or when you get hit, all of those scenarios, it's much easier to be in a front-wheel drive car to deal with difficult scenarios where you're not bang on the racing line pumping out the laps. So in the end, I said over the course of a season, that'll probably save you more places that you would lose in a rear-wheel drive car by just overcorrecting or undercorrecting. You'll save yourself more places across the season by picking a car that reacts much nicer to difficult scenarios. But some people find the front-wheel drives slower than the rear-wheel drives. Some people can get the lap time out of the cars differently, which is why I think Jack and Oliver have picked it, and it's working pretty well for them so far.
Absolutely, it's why it's great that we're able to offer the drivers a little bit more variety, a bit more choice in car for this one, so you can find a car, hopefully, that is better tailored to your driving style. 3 minutes to go then, and Nicky Taylor not yet given up his hopes of claiming this second place, I don't think. Oliver Gibson is struggling to pull away. One lap he might gain a tenth, the next he seems to lose a tenth or so, and Nicky Taylor right back on him again as they come through Redgate Corner. There is Josh Martin. That looked like an awful lot of steering lock going into Redgate Corner. corner, but whatever he's doing, it's working nicely because suddenly he's 1.3 seconds up the road from Elliot Dalton-Ayres and looks as though he has got some decent late race pace. The Vauxhall Astra drops down through the old hairpin and starts the climb up through Starkey's Schwantz curve on a hybrid, using that extra electrical power to boost his way up the hill through Schwantz curve onto the brakes into McLean's. The Vauxhall, I think, a really underrated touring car, actually. It's a great looking car and I think always had the potential to do well in real world touring car racing. And Josh Martin, who is our most recent touring car champion, of course, from a couple of seasons ago, I think we're going to see him winning races before too much longer. Flexes the hands there as he goes down the back straight. I refer you to my earlier point, Lewis, about sim racing not being easy.
Yeah, I think Josh might do a bit better if he keeps his hands on the steering wheel, though, if I'm honest. Might help him out a bit. We'll get Dave to pass on the message to him. As Dave's making a little reference to how Josh used Colgate instead of thermal paste for his CPU, and any computer wizards in the chat will know why that is a hilarious joke. But yeah, it's definitely not as easy as you think to go through the motions of a race with some heavy force feedback. Josh appears to have got a Fanatec Club Sport V2 wheel, which is quite a strong wheel. You can get up to a solid 8 Newton meters, I think, with that one. That is definitely enough to snap your wrist off if it goes wrong.
Yes, which thankfully it hasn't for him just yet, and he does continue to put in some good pace in the closing stages, because we're about to start the final lap of the race, would you believe. Some really entertaining battling earlier on, things settling down a bit through the middle part. A fairly typical season opener, I would say, really. We see this quite a lot from the opening race of our championships. Believe me, things will get more entertaining in race number 2 later on, because right now we've only had one non-finisher, Stuart Vickers, who retired a few laps ago, so we're set for a full 23 car reversed grid. That's got to be something of a VRRC record, so expect lots of action. Lee Morgan at the moment, former F1000 champion, would be lining up on the pole position alongside Ben Jemison, and Jack Smith will be grateful to be banking some good points in this race, because there is every chance that they may end up not necessarily being the last points that he banks tonight, but I think his chances of a double, in fact the chances of anybody doing the double this season, are surely fairly slim. He brings his BMW through Coppice Corner for the final time. Oliver Gibson chasing him down. Oh, there is someone pulling off. That is Reese Bell. Now, is Reese out of fuel? He's pulled over at the side of the road. Not quite sure what that's all about. Lee Morgan goes on the grass to get out of the race leader. It's all kicking off at the end of the race. Lee Morgan now pulls onto the grass as well. A slightly messy end to what's been a perfect race, though, for Jack Smith and Oliver Gibson. It is a 1-2 finish to start off their season, and they're going to be absolutely delighted with that one. The DK Power Racing BMWs finishing at the front of the field. Nicky Taylor comes home in 3rd ahead of Carl Felver. Scott Bugner in 4th place, with Josh Martin showing some late race pace in 6th. Elliot Dalton-Ayres 7th. Eric Axelson 8th. Joel Lask, I think, will be the man most disappointed probably with his race result there. Only 9th for him. And on his debut in the championship, Craig Curtis gets a top 10 finish. He stayed out of trouble. He was never caught by some far more experienced drivers behind him. Andy Dorman, Paul Laramie, Andy Carroll, Ethan Hill, all of whom have shown good pace in touring car racing in the past. And Craig was able to fend them off. So really, really good stuff that from Craig Curtis. And indeed from the vast majority of them, with only one retirement, as I said, come the end of the race. Well, fantastic action there to start off our season. We'll have race 2 coming up very shortly, plus all of the reaction to the opening race from our podium finishers on the other side of this break. Welcome back, everyone, to the VRRC. Lots to talk about after our first race of the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship. It was a lights to flag victory in the end for our pole sitter, Jack Smith, who joins us now in the commentary box. Jack, congratulations. I would say, from the outside looking in anyway, that was about the perfect race. You nailed the start, you built a lead, and you managed it over 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it literally does not get any better than that, does it, really? So, yeah, I know, so I was worrying about the start beforehand, but I might have to just worry a bit more every time now, considering that was literally no wheel spin, just straight off the line. It was perfect. So I just managed my push to passes towards the end of the race and put in the fastest lap as well. So couldn't have gone any better. We're really, really happy with all these results as well. He's done really, really well. So super, super proud.
Yeah, absolutely. A brilliant start from Oliver, and we'll chat to him in a moment or two. Your thoughts there about that second race, because I was just listening in on your conversation you were having with Nikki Taylor during the ad break, saying that the car was really very easy to drive. You weren't, struggling for control. But might that now change when you're fighting your way through from 23rd on the grid? Because that is, if there is a weakness to the rear-wheel drive car, it can be that a bit of contact can really unsettle it.
Yeah, potentially. Although I'm feeling a bit more confident than I did a few days ago now with this car. So, yeah, we'll see. In Nürburgring, it wasn't really too much of an issue when we had the pre-season test race. But, yeah, we'll see what goes on, and we'll just try and make our way through the fields as far as we can.
Best of luck for that, Jack, and congratulations. Early championship leader, pretty much a perfect start to the season for you in the DK Power Racing BMW. Best of luck for race 2.
Cheers, Andy.
So Jack Smith claims the race victory. Lewis now able to catch up with his teammate Oliver Gibson, who, Lewis, made an absolutely blinding start.
Yeah, Oliver, you went all the way up to P2 before we'd even got to turn 1, but then they caught you up. How was it holding off the HFC boys behind you for that part of the race and holding those hybrids just enough in for the final part of the race to pull away? How did you manage it?
I mean, it was the case of just when they use it, you use it. And then, so obviously there's a cooldown. So I was like, I'll wait for their cooldown, press it, get some gap. And it's just trying to maintain the gap, to be fair. And there was a couple of moments where I was like, ooh, they're a bit close. So, but surprisingly, it wasn't that stressful.
Well, race 2, I think, will be more stressful. What's the approach for this one?
Stay out of trouble, probably. Like Jack and Andy said, any contact in these, probably send it spinning right round. So, yeah, it's just about trying to get to the front as quick as possible, with the least amount of damage as possible. And we've got all these quick cars in front of us now, so that's going to be a big challenge.
Well, good luck. I wish you the best of luck and hope to see you again at this point at the end of race 2.
Thank you.
Excellent stuff from Oliver Gibson. Second place finish for him, and third position going the way of Nikki Taylor. Nikki, welcome back to the podium. I think we were all expecting good things from you this season, but that race was really a very strong one, wasn't it? It seemed like you had good long-run pace, particularly, especially compared to the other front-wheel drive cars.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of used to front-wheel drive with obviously driving Mini in real life and just basically being the only thing I drive. So yeah, the long-run pace was there, but honestly, coming the start of tonight, I was not thinking I was going to do well because my times were so far off everyone else. It was like 5/10 off. But yeah, managed to get my head down and just push through. But yeah, Ollie and that were just too quick, and then BMWs are just so quick off the line. So trying to maximise what we've got in a front-wheel drive car is going to be the key.
Indeed so, Nikki. I know you haven't got long to prepare for race 2, but hopefully we'll get a chance to chat to you again later on. Best of luck for race 2.
Oh, cheers.
So Nikki Taylor on the podium then to start off his season. But as I said earlier on, the chances of seeing drivers doubling up on podiums, let alone race wins, I think is pretty low because it's a full, almost, reverse grid. Ben Jemison and Kenny Press on the front row. As long as you finish on the lead lap in race 1, you're eligible for the reverse. So the race 1 winner starting deep in the field. Lights out, then away they go. The rush towards Redgate begins. stand well back, everybody, because if they all get through this first corner, a miracle has occurred at virtual Donington Park. They are 4 wide in the middle of the pack, and those at the back might have the right idea, actually. I think they're just trying to distance themselves from the carnage about to unfold. There's a bit of dust, but actually, oh no, off we go. There are cars spinning. There's carnage down the Craner curves, and let's try and see Sam Zero is one of those off the road. We've got one of the Phoenix Hyundais rejoining as well. That's Elliot Dalton-Ayres, but Sam Zero, I think it was, got fired off into the barriers. Josh Martin's on the grass. There's a Toyota sliding down the grass on the other side of the road. Ben Jemison leads the way. Kenny Press second. Blakey in third position ahead of John Jones and Andy Dorman, who we know is a bit of a front-wheel drive expert. Then Joel Lask. So Joel Lask, the first of these sort of expected front runners to start breaking through the order. He's got Scott Bugner, his teammate, and Carl Falvers and Nicky Taylor not far back. So they made much better progress through the opening few corners than the BMWs did, and that gives them an early advantage. Side by side, change for second place. Blakey up the inside of Kenny Press. Behind them is anyone's getting us Lask. That's Joel Lask sideways after possible side-to-side contact with Andy Dorman. A Honda off through the gravel trap. Carl Felvers looks like he has just had his life flash before his eyes. Lewis, that was dramatic.
It was indeed. We thought we'd got away with it at turn 1, but then chaos happened immediately after. We said it's gone cleanly, but Kyle's threading the needle there on the hybrid. He's already up to 6th place. So of our kind of lead pack of drivers, he is at the front at the moment. We've got Jack Smith there in 10th. We've got Nicky in 8th. Oliver Gibson down in 14th. So they're a bit spread out, the leading group. So it'll be interesting to see how each of them manages to navigate their way. Well, can they navigate their way to the front?
Brilliant moment there from Carl Felvers as he puffed out his cheeks going up towards McLean's. I think that was the first time he'd breathed in about 2 minutes in the early stages of this race. A quick rub of the face as he approaches now John Jones. He's got Joel Lask going around the outside of him. Nicky Taylor's up the inside behind, almost gets into Kyle Felvers. One of the Hyundais is sideways. That was Scott Bugner. Lask is on the grass again, as we saw in the opening race, but Kyle Felvers somehow is managing to dodge through the carnage. Kenny Press has got the lead now, but that's Chris Blakey going up the inside. John Jones diving up the inside into third and bringing with him Felvers. So it's Felvers, Lask, Taylor who have made the best progress of those front runners from the earlier race, and as long as he can survive these early exchanges, I think there's a good chance here that Carl Felvers could get into the lead. He's up to third. He's going for second. No, slots back in behind John Jones as a sideways Nicky Taylor further back. Nicky Taylor slides down the grass. He bangs into the side of the Toyota of Ben Jemison. Somehow Jack Smith picks his way through that as well, but it's all unravelled for Taylor.
Yeah, it has. I think there might have been contact from behind there for Nicky. It looked very much like he was immediately sideways rather than he's tried to chuck it in and it's gone a bit wrong. So I think there's been a tap from behind there. We'd have to have a look in the race debrief to find out there. But all of this means that Kyle he's pretty hyped because I think he knows that John Jones is one of the most fierce defenders in VRRC, and he loves defending from the faster drivers in race 2 especially, and Kyle's in front of him. So he knows he's got a good chance now. If he can get past Chris Blakey quickly, then he's got a good chance at this race 2 win, as we see some moves going on in the background as Joel is trying to find his way past.
I could sit and watch Carl Felvers all day. That was fantastic. And you could see him there saying, "Oh, he's off," because Chris Blakey got it all wrong at the first corner, and through went Felvers. So Felvers somehow is in the lead. Don't ask me how. I would pay good money to watch that first lap back again. I think that's definitely something that needs to be put on YouTube. That is Kenny Press. He won't want this on YouTube. He's done a Mansell. He's hit the bridge on the inside at Starkey's corner, thankfully with slightly less dramatic effect. Right, breathe, everyone. There's a lot of carnage happening, but let's run you through the order. Felvers leads the way as we approach the 5-minute mark. Joel Lask second, Scott Bugner third. So the LB Motorsport cars moving through nicely. Andy Dorman fourth. Jack Smith is in 5th position. That is really impressive stuff. In fact, both of the BMWs going well, because Oliver Gibson is up into 6th place, Andy Carroll 7th, Josh Martin 8th, Axelson 9th, and Reese Bell inside the top 10. The big losers, really, Nicky Taylor down in 14th position, and Elliot Dalton-Ayres, after early dramas, is down in, well, now 23rd. He's just been overtaken by Paul Laramie, which suggests that maybe Elliot is carrying some damage, but some really impressive drives there. Kyle Felvers clearly stealing the headlines, but the BMWs, Lewis, have not only survived those opening laps, they've thrived in them, and they've both moved into the top 10.
Yeah, they have. It'd be good to see a replay of how Oliver Gibson went from 14th up into 6th in the space of about a lap. That was incredibly chaotic for him, but he seems to have made his way forward very nicely, as has Jack. They've obviously placed their car quite sensibly, had a bit of luck involved, but they've managed to make their way towards the front of the field now. And the question will be, can Jack chase down Kyle, or is Kyle going to be able to hold the gap now? Will we see more pace from the BMW boys, or will it be a case of Kyle can just control this now and take home the win?
Absolutely. This is where I guess we'll start to see how much Jack Smith was managing the situation in race 1, whether he did have more pace available to him at the end of the race, that he just wasn't really sort of unleashing upon them, because now he's got a target to chase. He's in 5th place. He's not yet in 2nd. I mean, that will take some doing. He's got to get past Andy Dorman, Scott Bugner and Joel Ask, none of whom are slow drivers, of course. But if he can get through, does he then have the late race pace to chase after the Honda, which we saw was probably the best of the front-wheel drive cars at the end of race number 1. So Jack Smith with it all to do here, but even if he were to finish in 5th place, quite frankly, that would be a really, really solid start to his season. Things now just starting to settle down ever so slightly as people find themselves largely racing where they ought to be in the order, and the early race shuffling starting now to cease a little bit and giving drivers a chance, quite frankly, just to take stock of the situation. Oliver Gibson we're following here, chasing after Josh Martin. Really nice moment actually in Jack Smith's interview after race 1, as he took the time to congratulate his teammate Oliver Gibson. We've seen flashes of brilliance from Oliver in the past, but I wonder whether maybe this season is going to be his VRRC coming of age almost. Is this now going to be the championship where Oliver really establishes himself as one of the big names in our little racing family?
Yeah, it's definitely been great to see his improvement since he first joined in VRRC. I think it was around the time we run our Praga Fun Cup, where he was, like, no disrespect to him, he wasn't one of the quickest. But now we've seen him on pole position at Norris Ring in the touring cars in the previous championship. We've seen him win a race in the GTV3s at Suzuka. You know, he's made a huge amount of progress in the time that he's been here, and throughout that time he's always been happy to just learn. He's had the right attitude for it. That's why if I gave out awards for the GTV3s, he would definitely have been my driver of the season. He improved so much throughout the season, and just he keeps on working on his driving in a quiet but bit nervy for Ethan there in the background. You can't miss Ethan in this championship. He's running possibly the brightest livery we've had in VRRC since Nicky ran this back in the touring cars a long time ago. So if you're a fan of Ethan, it shouldn't be too hard to find him somewhere.
No, certainly he caught my attention then going into the chicane as he arrived almost backwards and dropped down into 12th place as a result. Nicky Taylor there 4 inches back towards the top 10. That was a good battle actually between Ethan, Andy Carroll and Reece Bell. Reece Bell having a strong run inside the top 10 for the time being in his Ford Focus, looking to try and stay there, but he's got Nicky Taylor chasing him down, and now with Ethan Hill looking to try and bounce back from that moment as well. Alok Iyengar comes through in 13th then, Curtis in 14th, another solid run from him, whilst Ben Jemison from pole has dropped down into 15th place. Nicky Taylor there looking up the inside of Reece Bell and Andy Carroll as they went onto the exhibition straight. How did that one sort itself out? Well, for the time being, Carroll ahead of Bell ahead of Taylor. Andy Carroll on the hybrid there to try and defend as opposed to attack and try and put a bit of distance between himself and the Ford and Honda behind him. We have at the moment 4 different makes of car represented inside the top 5 right now. Honda from 2 Hyundais, then a Ford, then a BMW, and actually then the Vauxhall of Josh Martin, the other Vauxhall there though of Eric Axelson, having a really tasty battle with Oliver Gibson and his teammate, in fact Josh Martin just ahead of him. Wherever you look, there are battles to be had here as Nicky Taylor, does he move back into the top 10? Yes he does, getting clear there of Andy Carroll, who all of a sudden, Lewis, loses 2 places.
Yeah, I have to say, it seems no matter what cars we throw at them, Reece Bell and Andy Carroll always seem to find a way to be right next to each other. It doesn't matter what it is, if it's touring cars, it's GT cars, it's vans, it's trucks, they're always next to each other, having a really well-spirited but also fierce rivalry somewhere on track. They're always next to each other, and they have the nicest friendly rivalry where they'll work so hard to beat each other, but there's never any bad blood. It's always really clean racing, and it's always really respectful between them, but they are so determined to beat each other, and they're always right next to each other. And it's going to get even closer now as Nicky goes up the inside of Reece. That'll delay Reece back into Andy, so we'll get battling resuming between them, I think, soon. Oh, there's a bit of contact further back there. Oh,
that was Ethan Hill.
Ethan's
Ethan Hill
not
out
impressed
wide.
on the Zoom call there.
I'm not surprised, quite frankly. Here comes, well, that's Reece Bell coming back at Nicky Taylor. That was an interesting attempt at a pass. Reece Bell not particularly happy with what happened, as you said. That means that Alok Iyengar now closes in on him. Adrian, by the way, in the chat asking what's happening up front. Well, it might not make for great viewing if you are a Carl Felvis fan, because that lead gap suddenly is coming down. Joel Lask was 2/10 slower than the leader on the previous lap, but now he's looking up the inside into the final chicane. That didn't quite work, but all of a sudden, Joel Lask looking quicker. Now, Lewis, this is baffling me because the Honda looked like it had really, really good long-run pace in race one, better than the Hyundais, although you could argue we didn't really see the best of Joel Lask in race one, and all of a sudden in this one, we reach halfway distance, and the advantage seems to lie with the Hyundai. Jack Smith, meanwhile, up the inside of Andy Dorman, and he goes fourth.
Yeah, it looks like Joel has just got the tyres working nicely for him at the moment. He has used 2 more hybrid activations than Kyle at the moment, so Kyle does have that little bit in hand, but it's close. I wouldn't have expected Joel to be hounding Kyle as much as he is at the moment when he got breezed past earlier on in the race, and given how much further back he finished from Kyle in race one, but Joel seems to have found something that he was missing in race one and is now putting Kyle under pressure, and it seems now that they're burning through hybrids at about the same rate as each other, so at some point Kyle is going to have those 2 in hand and will probably pull away, as there's a bit of carnage there. I'm not really sure what's happened there. I think it's Oliver Gibson that's dropping down.
Yeah, Gibson launched up the inside of Josh Martin, I think it was. It didn't work, and it's going to cost them both a place because Eric Axelson now comes to the outside of Martin, having already got past Gibson, and the 2 green Vauxhall teammates will run wheel to wheel now out of Redgate Corner. They're still wheel to wheel as they go through Hollywood, and Eric Axelson at some point will surely have to bail out of this. Down the Crane of Curves is when he decides to bail out of it, but that has all sort of been triggered, really, by Jack Smith and Andy Dorman having that side-by-side exchange at Redgate a lap ago. I called it as Jack Smith going fourth, but actually Dorman got the switchback, got back ahead of him, and that sort of bottled this whole group up. Again, typical Donington Park stuff. You're riding on board with Josh Martin whilst watching Josh Martin, who is watching his mirrors more than maybe he's looking out in front of him, because Eric Axelson is right behind him. Jack Smith, though, clearly quicker than Andy Dorman at the moment, and wants to try and find a way through before the swarming pack behind start nibbling at his heels.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we have a look at the lead gap quickly, it looks like now Joel is going to run out of hybrids, so Adrian, you can breathe now. It looks like Kyle may now pull away, but we've got a great view here as Josh is going for the move.
Thought he was going to make it 3 wide on the inside. Jack Smith going past Dorman. This time doesn't run wide. Dorman will, though, after a shoulder barge from Josh Martin. And is Axelson coming through as well? He's certainly trying to. Josh Martin, though, has got the run on the BMW down towards the old hairpin. This is a brave place to make a move. He gives Jack Smith a tap in the tail through the Crane of Curves, then gets a wheel on the grass. Martin sideways, drifts out wide. Brilliant car control, as we've become used to seeing from Josh Martin. But it just drops him back ever so slightly now from the Beamer, which might now have the pace to break away. I think a podium, though, is perhaps out of the question now, with 5.5 minutes to go and 5.5 seconds to make up to Scott Bugner. Jack Smith may have to settle for 4th place. The 2 Vauxhall teammates, though, getting themselves together now, with Eric Axelson going on the hunt to try and find a way past an always entertaining Josh Martin.
Here, Josh never fails to provide us with entertainment. If it's us catching his mistakes on the broadcast every time, or it's him pulling some crazy overtake we didn't think was going to be on, he always does something to entertain us, and it seems like Andy Dorman's dropping back a little bit now. He was fighting very nicely with Jack Smith and seemed to have him covered up until the point that the two Mean Green Racing Team cars turned up and have now shuffled him back to 7th. And he's slowly dropping off the back of them and into the clutches of Oliver Gibson, who's now kind of calmed it down and is bringing himself back into contention with this group.
Interesting interpretation of track limits there from Jack Smith coming out of the old hairpin. He's pushing on as he tries to get away from Josh Martin, who's also gapping now slightly Eric Axels. Now they've been released from behind Andy Dorman. They're all starting to spread out again ever so slightly. Dorman, I reckon, has just lost his rhythm a little bit after losing that place, and you just can't afford to do that in this championship. If you lose your rhythm and you drop a 10th or 2 a lap all of a sudden, you will be constantly under attack from those behind you, and that is the case now for Dorman, who's got Oliver Gibson behind him. Gibson perhaps a bit frustrated, you sense, to be stuck down in 8th place. He was running better than that, had that failed attempt at a move at the final chicane, but he's back up the inside of Andy Dorman now, looking to Redgate corner, and the BMW is going to go through on the brakes and put Gibson back into 7th. Can Dorman get that switch back though? This is what he did to Jack Smith a few laps ago, and he's certainly going to try it. Barges his way through on the inside, proper touring car stuff. Oliver Gibson, in fairness, not showing a lot of emotions about that, but he might do in a minute if they make contact through the craners. He has to bail out of it, and Andy Dorman goes back through. We've seen this from Andy in the past though, haven't we, Lewis? If he gets overtaken, he immediately tries to get the place back. This time though, Gibson up the inside into McLean's might be able to make the move stick.
Yeah, Andy's one of those drivers you love and hate racing against by the seams of it. I haven't had the pleasure yet, but he provides good entertainment and very hard battling, but it gets frustrating because he's very good at it, and it means that if you make the most minute of errors or leave the door half open as there's a chance, then he'll take it and he'll punish you for that mistake. He'll always be there to pick up the pieces or make a move happen, which means racing him is really entertaining, but also you have to be on your top game to get it done.
Indeed so. Certainly entertaining to watch, isn't he? And Oliver Gibson just runs a bit wide there at Redgate, but Dorman not quite close enough to capitalise on that. Nicky Taylor, by the way, gaining on these two now as well. So Nicky Taylor sniffing the opportunity to at least move back into the top 8, maybe one better if he gets a wriggle on here. Nicky's going to be frustrated with the way this race has gone. There's no two ways about it. That little moment, well, big moment really, that he had down at the old hairpin, costing him any chance of a podium, could even have been a race victory up until that point. But Nicky Taylor will bag as many points as he can. Lead gap, by the way, just creeping back down again over the last lap or so as Joel Last continues to apply the pressure to Kyle Felvers into the final couple of laps of racing now, though. So Kyle, who we've seen defend a lead brilliantly in the past, is perhaps going to have to do that again as we move into the closing stages. Last, though, with no hybrids left, whilst Kyle Felvers is using his penultimate one now to try and gap the Hyundai at the beginning of what will be, Lewis, the penultimate lap.
Yeah, Joel's really closing in again now, so I think Kyle's got to refocus and just keep wary of the fact that Joel is right there. Joel's going for the move, for the lead.
Oh, up the inside of the old hairpin. That is a wonderfully brave bit of driving. Did it work? Has the Hyundai gone through? Yes, it has. Joel Last to the lead. Brilliant racing. And Kyle Felvers, well, again, if you're a good lip reader, you can tell what he's saying there. But Joel Last was committed to the move up the inside, and he has now gone through. Now, Kyle had one more hybrid left. I think he still has one more hybrid left. Can he use that now to come back? The Hyundai driver will have one lap to go at the end of this lap. Where does Kyle choose to use the hybrid? A shrug of the shoulders as he sort of gears himself up for what is going to be a titanic final lap duel between these two. Joel Last, who had the potential in qualifying to do well tonight. Things didn't go well in race 1, but now in the second race, he has driven brilliantly to get to the lead. Felvers to the outside, but Last doesn't feel the need to defend too heavily into Redgate corner. Who gets the better clear exit, though. There's no doubt about it. It's Kyle Felvers. He's up the inside line. There's almost a tap. There is a tap through Hollywood, but still the Hyundai stays ahead. Now, though, towards the old hairpin. This is where Lask made the move a lap ago. Felvers surely will consider the inside. He can't get there. Lask is sideways. Loses the rear of the car on corner entry. And now Kyle Felvers has got the run. I think he's using the hybrid for the final time. And if he can stay there, he'll have the inside line for McLean's corner. Honda and Hyundai side by side, and Felvers goes back through. Runs wide, though. Lask back up the inside. Proper touring car racing as they lean on each other slightly. The Honda is sideways, but stays ahead. It's again, Lask is up the inside. Proper contact that time, and Kyle Felvers is furious. He's off the road, surely. They are still side by side, heading down the back straight. Lask on the inside, Felvers on the outside, neither wanting to give way. Lask will lean on the Honda into the chicane. Felvers round the outside. Surely not. Has the inside line for the final corner. Drag race to the line. Get the photo finish camera ready. It is Kyle Felvers who wins the second round of the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship after an all-out brawl on the final lap between he and Joel Lask, and Kyle Felvers is pumped about that. That was one of the most intense final laps of racing I have ever seen, Lewis. What a finish.
Wow, yeah, that was that's one way to do a final lap battle for the lead, and I'm glad we introduced this picture-in-picture webcam stuff. We got to see the pure emotions. No helmet, no nothing. You see exactly how the driver is feeling throughout that whole battle. You could see Kyle was seething every time there was the tiniest little bit of contact with Joel there, and then you saw the joy when he knew that when he was crossing the line he'd won the race. But wow, what a finish to an absolutely chaotic couple of races.
It was typical reverse grid touring car racing, that really, wasn't it? But the final lap battle there, you really didn't know which way that was going to go. And actually, the fact that they kept on banging doors with each other was just riling them both up, I think, more and more with every corner. And it was guaranteed excitement for us, that is for sure. So it's Kyle Felvers that wins, Joel Lask second, and then Scott Bugner in third, Jack Smith fourth, Josh Martin fifth, ahead of Eric Axelson, Oliver Gibson, Nicky Taylor, Andy Dorman, and Reese Bell to complete the top 10. What a race. What finish. We will have all the reaction, and plenty of it there will be, I'm sure, to that race in just a few minutes' time. Well, welcome back to the VRRC and the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship. What a sensational second race we have just enjoyed. It had everything you'd expect from a touring car reverse grid race. Bit of carnage at the start, some brilliant drives through the pack, and it all boiled down to a titanic battle for the ages between Kyle Felvers and Joel Lask, both of whom I'm sure will have opinions on what happened over that final lap and a half, and I'm delighted to say that we can dive into that right now with our podium finishers joining us in the commentary box. And Kyle Felvers, we will come to you first as the race winner, but there were multiple occasions during that final lap where, I'll be honest, I didn't think we were going to be chatting to either you or Joel, because that was no holds barred, wasn't it?
No, I didn't think I would be chatting to you either, really. That was probably one of the most intense finishes I've had at the VRRC. Yeah, that was just utter chaos for the last lap. Enjoyable for some parts, and then some parts, you know, it's just crazy. But yeah, it was a good race.
I don't know what I enjoyed more, watching the racing on track or watching your facial expressions through that final lap, because we've got our onboard cameras now. We can see your reaction to it. I mean, it goes to show just how intense this is. And we saw all of the emotions on your face, because that is what racing is about. You know, there are highs, there are lows, and you mustn't have known exactly what was going to come of that last lap.
Yeah, I mean, anyone could do anything. Like, anything happens in racing. Someone's brakes could fail for all you know. Like, it's just... like you say, there are some highs, there are some lows, and you've sort of just got to take it as it is and do what's right in the moment. And yeah, I mean, the facial expression, I'm chatting to Nikki and Ethan, and we've got Jordan and Taylor now on board with us, so I'm talking to them, and oh yeah, it's a good time. We all enjoy it. It's so much fun to do, but yeah, there are some emotions at some point.
And honestly, you wouldn't be human if you weren't expressing those, to be quite honest. Overall, good night for you, I think, Kyle. Really good points scored in the first race. Are you happy with the pace that this Honda has? We chatted to Nicky after that first race. He seemed happy with the long run pace, and it's clearly a car that you can switch on quickly at the beginning of the race too.
Yeah, the Honda, it's good. It's a good car. Obviously, you'll notice I've picked front-wheel drive over rear-wheel drive this season.
Yeah.
So it's obviously a good car if I've done that, because I just felt the Honda, it's just a safer option. You've got pace in it, and you can be at the top, and you know you've not got the risk factor of being tapped round and not being able to just floor it and save the car, right? And in that reverse grid, you're gonna need that, because that was utter chaos. Trying to get through that pack, going past everyone, it was incredible, but chaos.
It was. I could not agree more with that, Carl. Huge congratulations. Really strong start to your season. I'm sure we'll be speaking to you a lot more over the coming weeks.
Cheers, Andy.
Carl Felfus then gets a very, very exciting win in a very, very exciting second round of the championship. And Lewis Edwards now can chat to the man who pushed Kyle all the way.
Well, Joel, it was so nearly the win in race 2. So close at the end there. You threw the kitchen sink and everything and more at Kyle there, but you seem to find a lot more pace in that second race. You seem to find something towards the midpoint of that race. What changed compared to race 1?
Damage, I think. I don't know. Race 1 it just didn't happen. I made a mistake at the start, then it just ended up getting smacked out the way, left, right, and centre, and just sort of settled where I was. But yeah, that second race was carnage, to be fair. It was definitely interesting.
So now that you've got a podium finish, what can you take away from this round and into the next round?
Just the pace. Do you know what? The car's actually quite quick, to be fair. But it's just out the corners. This car does not like curbs whatsoever. And if you compare it to the BMs as well, they've just got that straight line speed, especially off the start. It's just crazy. You can't compete with that. So I think it's a good all-rounder, but it's not perfect in any one area. So we're gonna have to see what we can do with it. There's not much you can tweak on them either. So yeah, we'll move. We'll keep going.
Well, good luck to you. I hope we'll be chatting to you very soon in another interview.
Nice one. Cheers, mate.
Joel Lask, second place, sounding physically exhausted after that. I'm not surprised, to be honest. That was a very intense conclusion to the race. Third place, and I confess, a driver we didn't see a lot of over that race, because Scott Bugner, you had a pretty quiet race beyond the first couple of laps where a lot of progress was made. That was a little bit calmer than it was for those up the road. How was it from your perspective?
Nice and easy, mate. Sunday drive, really. Yeah, it weren't too bad. It was okay. It's just finding the balance of the car. The car feels good around certain areas on the track. That last chicane, it really struggles. You know, you've got to really nail that sausage curb on the right-hander, and if you don't get it right, it really drags you out and it ruins your whole run down the main straight. So, a bit of work to do with the setup, but you know, all in all, you know, I enjoyed it. The pace is thereabouts. You know, well done to Kyle and Joe. It was a good race. I could have hoped for one more lap. I might have been on the back of them. But yeah, it was all good. I enjoyed it, and roll on next week.
the racing is so intense out there and so much closer, it seems, than it has been even in our most recent couple of championships. I know that we've chatted about this before and we've seen the way that these championships have become closer and more competitive, but does this one feel just that extra step further forward? You spent a lot of time tonight sort of battling with people in and around the middle of the top 10. Does it feel like you've just got a little bit less wriggle room now than you normally would?
100%. You know, I think if you look at the qualifying times, I think it was a second separating the top 15, 16 cars. So anyone really and truthfully on the grid, especially on the reverse grid, you know, can win the race. And, you know, and points make prizes, as we know. You know, you get a couple of good reverse grid races in race 2 and decent points in race 1, then you can have, you know, it's going to be a very, very close championship, especially with, you know, the practice times as well. You know, I think at one point me and Josh had exactly the same lap time, and the first 4 or 5 times were separated by hundredths. And I think in qualifying, me and Kyle got exactly the same lap time. So we know it's close, but there's no room for error. That's the problem now, and especially with the race 2 grid. You know, one bad race in this championship, who knows?
Absolutely, and you're certainly someone who will be hoping to be fighting for this championship. The last 2 times that we've raced touring cars, you've been a race winner, and the last championship you were very nearly a championship winner as well. What's the key over the season then? Is it that consistency? Is it going to be important to try and win some races, do you think, or can you win this championship just through sort of consistently finishing top 3, top 5?
A bit of both, if I'm being honest. You know, you need to get the points, so you need to finish the racing, but you know, when you've got people like, you know, Jolton with Jack, you know, Jack Smith, you know, that car is a rocket off the line like it is in real life. So if you finish behind him in the first race, if you're starting just in front of him in the second, you know, you've got a challenge going into turn 1. So that's where we've got to sort of try and work on and see what we can do to try and back them BMWs off. But again, you know, Jack got a solid, 4th in that second race. So points is where it is, and we. You know, I think I've led nearly every championship that I've been in VRRC, but you know, that bad luck strikes, and that's where we've got to try and, you know, stop that and get the points in.
Absolutely. Well, so far so good, Scott. I can tell you you're featuring pretty high up the points table after that first night of racing, so it's all going pretty much according to plan, I'd say. Congratulations on that podium, though. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.
So there are our podium finishers then from our second round of the championship, one that I think we'll all remember for quite some time. And well, I hinted at it there. The championship standings, provisionally at least, have been totted up after the first 2 races. And this is what they look like. Jack Smith, after a brilliantly consistent night, that maximum points haul in race 1, followed by a back to 4th run in race 2. Well, he will hold a slender advantage, 4 points to the good over Kyle Felmus, the 2 race winners tonight, finding themselves at the top of the points. Oliver Gibson 3rd after another solid night as well. Scott Bugner 4th, and Joel Lask 5th, sort of salvaging his night a bit in that second race. Nicky Taylor will be a bit disappointed down in 6th, I reckon. Josh Martin and Eric Axelson likewise. They were in and around the top 10 in both races, but never quite showed that front-running potential. Elliot Alton-Ayres 9th, and Andy Dorman inside the top 10, but it is very, very early stages, of course, with still 7 nights of racing, 14 more races to go before we crown a champion. It's going to be a fantastic season to watch, and you won't want to miss any bit of it. Well, brilliant racing tonight, and one man who I know has been watching on from afar and enjoying the battling just as much as we did, I'm sure, is Rich Hayden, who joins us now in the commentary box. And Rich, I would say as first rounds of the championship go, that one was pretty successful.
Just get my breath back. That was amazing. Absolutely fantastic. Do you know what? Actually, props to all the drivers, right? It's a big grid, new drivers, varying skill levels throughout the field. Obviously, everybody's, you know, a decent level, but obviously we've got some guys that are pretty much right up at the top and people that are a little bit slower, but props to all of them because the driving standards were really good. There was a little bit of the usual touring car shoulder barges and a couple of bits of missed braking points, but other than that, what a race, what a round, what a couple of races there. So well done everybody, it was really good viewing.
got to get your thoughts on that second race, because I said at the time that was basically everything you'd expect from a reverse grid race. Bit of carnage, some really good racing, and that finish, I mean, one of, if not the best final lap that I think I've ever covered here at the VRRC. That wasn't bad, was it?
Yeah, it was obviously. I get a feeling we'll probably be reviewing that in the race debrief on Monday night. But you know, it's easy for us to watch the broadcast and to make an opinion of it. But the data and the replays will tell whether it was fair. But yeah, it was fantastic to watch, and both of them going in shoulder by shoulder into the final chicane. What a final race, final lap, brilliant.
It was, and they did both survive to the end as well. So despite the aggressive racing, they did at least manage to get to the flag, which was pretty good. Exciting things ahead then, I think, within this championship. And we touched upon it earlier on in the night, myself and Lewis, but a lot of hard work's gone into making this championship possible, because I think a lot of people who perhaps tune in from week to watch us don't necessarily appreciate that, you know, the drivers don't just download a car, jump in it, and go racing, do they? There is so much work that has to happen long before the drivers actually get to turn a wheel.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if we just take the cars themselves, I think we've probably put in around 200 hours on the physics of the cars, adding the hybrid system, making changes to them, making them as level as possible. You know, when the cars came to us, they were in need of some TLC. That's probably the best way for us to put it. The level of performance was very variable between them. The physics was variable between them. The tyres were variable between them, which wouldn't have given us a good championship. So, you know, over 200 hours of testing changes, and testing changes. So loads of work in that. Obviously, lots of work on the graphics. Lewis has done a really good job with putting the broadcast together as usual. So really pleased with that. But masses of work goes on, lots of administration, lots of practice race for the new drivers so they can get used to the way that we do things. So lots of work goes into it, and hopefully it pays off and everybody enjoys the races. And I think we've managed that.
I could not agree more. I certainly thoroughly enjoyed myself tonight. Rich, thank you for joining us, and congratulations on the fantastic work that's been done. I think this could be one of our best championships yet.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you, and thanks to you, mate, as always. You're doing your stellar job. So let's get Jack back on next week and give Lewis a rest so he can concentrate on his cameras. But Lewis has done a great job on comms tonight, so props to him as well. So really pleased with how it's gone.
All very nice and positive, isn't it? You think we all liked each other. We're doing a good job of putting on a show for everyone. Exactly. No, great job, everyone, and I'm sure we're hearing from Rich again as we get further on into the season. Right then, Lewis, VRRC, as always, a busy place. It's not just the racing that goes on Wednesday nights that we have going on. Plenty more coming up that people at home can get involved with.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, we're full for the touring cars. That's how successful it is. But do not fear, if you want to race with VRRC, there are plenty of other things you can get involved with. The most popular of which would be the time attack. Simple, you get a month or 2 weeks now. We've reduced it from a month to 2 weeks. Who can set the fastest lap time? At the moment, we've got the Formula One at Mugello concluding this Friday. I'm currently fastest, so open challenge to
Had
anybody.
to mention that, didn't we?
Well, open challenge to anybody, especially Oliver Gibson, who's second. It'd be good fun to have a battle with him over the stopwatch. But after that, we're going to be moving to a GT4, GT3, GT2 and GT1 progressive time attack like we did with the Formula One. So that's going to start out in the BMW M4 GT4, and that's going to be at the Hockenheim Ring. Then that'll progress to the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo at Imola, and then we're going to go to the Brabham GT2 at the Nürburgring. At Silverstone, and then the Porsche GT1 at the Nürburgring. So that is all to look forward to. And we've got the Mirror Fun Races, which follow the Formula One real season, but on the Tuesday before the race, we put on a race for anybody who wants to come and join. You don't have to be a member or anything. It's free to anybody who wants to come and take part, and it'll be a 15-minute quali, 30-minute race that follows the tracks and the car of the real-life Formula 1 calendar. And hopefully, we've seen some teasers that Race Sim Studio are very nearly finished in making their Formula Hybrid 2023, which is the company that make the current 2022 Formula 1 car, which we're using at the moment. So I think we're all really excited to switch over to that when that is available. And then obviously we've got the next couple of rounds of the touring cars. And that covers us in terms of racing. But we've also got lots of coaching and bits to do with the Sim Centre, which you can also get involved with. So you've heard, must have done, from all of our previous broadcasts about the VRRC Sim Centre. We've been fortunate enough to be invited down to go and give it all an unofficial opening and a test a few months ago, and it's all really good kit. We've got high-end direct drive wheels, hydraulic pedals, ultra-wide monitors, and if you ask Rich very nicely, he'll let you have a go on his motion rig, so proper motion platform, and that is a really good one to have some fun in. But if you want to improve your driving, you might be part of our Touring Car Championship, or you might just want to get better in sim, then we offer driver coaching either online, so from the comfort of your own sim, or in the simulator at the VRRC Centre, or on the real track if you're a real-life racing driver. And we can do coaching on all kinds of things. We can help you set up the car, help you get better knowledge of tracks, how to learn the tracks, how to figure out your braking points. And then we've got ones like we can do consistency, and then where you look, which is surprisingly important. Beyond just you need to be looking at the road in front of you, it's specifically where you look in front of you, how you look into the distance, when to look at your dash, all that kind of thing. We've got racecraft, but mainly reverse grid races. That'll be a benefit for our current touring car grid. And then we obviously have things to do with hardware and software for the simulator stuff. If you think you'd like to improve in any area, we will do our best to help you, and there's probably a perfect coach out there for you. And that pretty much sums up what we've going on.
It's a busy time as always at the VRRC. Nicely done that, Lewis. And if you fancy getting involved with the VRRC, then do head over to their social media pages, to their Discord, and you can enjoy all of that. Well, huge congratulations then to all of our drivers who have done such a good job here tonight, to our two race winners, Jack Smith and Carl Felvers. Incidentally, I can see a few of you asking, I think I did neglect to mention that Jack Smith was our choice of driver of the round. It seemed the obvious choice after a really strong couple races, and I think we did decide, Lewis, just to get it out of the way first round, that our NGK jacket, it was the hat, wasn't it, for the best it is a jacket.
It was
I get that confused. The NGK jacket to our best fan, if you like. We're going to give it to Dave this week, but that just means that everyone else has got 7 weeks left to impress us and take that off him. Well, not take it off him. We've got plenty of them to go around. You know what I mean. Anyway, we'll be back again next week for our second round of the championship on the Brands Hatch Indy Circuit, where myself, Lewis Edwards, Rich Hayden, and hopefully Jack Oliphant will be back to talk you through all of the action. It's going to be a fantastic season. You won't want to miss around. Same time, same place next week for the next instalment of the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship here on the VRRC.
Woo!